Germany in 1923 was a nation that looked like it had no future. The First World War had ended with the Treaty of Versailles, which demanded Germany pay enormous reparations, totaling 132 billion gold marks, an amount so unrealistic that even Britain's economist John Maynard Keynes warned it would destroy the entire German economy. Prices inside Germany spiraled out of control as the government printed more and more money to cover its debts. A loaf of bread went from costing 250 marks in January 1923 to 200 billion marks by November 2. Workers carried wages home in wheelbarrows, and shopkeepers often demanded payments immediately because the money lost value within hours. Foreign newspapers described Germany as the economic sick man of Europe, and many believed the country would break apart politically, financially, and socially. But in the middle of this chaos, a 46-year-old banker named Hjalmar Schacht stepped forward with ideas that would change Germany's fate. Schacht was not yet a famous economist, but he understood one thing better than almost anyone else in Europe: Germany's crisis could not be solved by printing more money. It needed trust, stability, and psychological confidence. What Schacht did next would quietly pull Germany back from the edge of collapse, and historians still call his plan one of the most brilliant economic rescues in modern history. Hjalmar Schacht was born in 1877 in a small German town and began his career as a banker with Dresdner Bank and later the German National Bank. During World War I, he managed foreign loans and became known for his ability to negotiate under pressure. But after the war, Schacht was deeply critical of the government's uncontrolled money printing. He believed the mark could only be saved through a complete reset, something bolder than anything Germany had attempted until then. By late 1923, the hyperinflation crisis had become so extreme that the German government was forced to search for a financial expert who could restore stability. Schacht's name kept coming up, especially after he wrote detailed proposals explaining why the mark was collapsing and how a new currency could restore order. In November 1923, he was appointed currency commissioner, a position that allowed him to put his plan into action. Unlike many politicians, Schacht did not blame ordinary citizens or foreign nations. He believed Germany's suffering was caused by a combination of political indecision, financial mismanagement, and international pressure. To rebuild Germany, he needed to create a system strong enough to convince the world that Germany could be trusted again, and he had to do it fast. The first thing Schacht understood was that Germany needed a new currency backed by real value, not gold, because Germany had almost none left, but something practical and believable. In one of the most innovative economic moves of the 20th century, Schacht created the Rentenmark, a temporary currency backed not by precious metals but by land and industrial assets. Instead of saying each bill was worth a certain amount of gold, Schacht declared that each unit of Rentenmark represented a claim on German farmland, factories, and industrial output. This was an extraordinary idea because it gave the currency psychological value. Even though people couldn't exchange Rentenmarks for land or factory shares, they believed the government would keep the money stable because the entire industrial nation stood behind it. One Rentenmark was set equal to 1 trillion old marks, instantly wiping out the hyperinflated currency and resetting prices across the country. Within weeks, inflation stopped. Foreign newspapers marveled at the sudden stability, calling it the miracle of the Rentenmark. But to Schacht, this wasn't magic. It was the result of a carefully calculated economic reboot that restored trust without relying on gold reserves Germany did not have. Stabilizing the currency was only step one. Germany still owed massive reparations that it could not possibly pay without international cooperation. Schacht became the key figure in negotiating the Dawes Plan, a 1924 agreement led by American banker Charles G. Dawes. Schacht traveled to the United States and Europe, explaining to Allied governments that crushing Germany would only destabilize Europe further. His goal was to convince the world that helping Germany recover was in everyone's best interest. Through a mix of charm, financial expertise, and relentless persuasion, Schacht helped secure a deal that reduced Germany's payments, stretched them over a longer period, and provided foreign loans, mostly from American banks, to rebuild German industries. These loans poured into German factories, railways, and mines, creating jobs and boosting productivity. For the first time since the war, Germany saw economic growth. Foreign investors began trusting the German economy again, and the international press described Schacht as the man who gave Germany back its dignity. Although many Germans still suffered from the aftermath of hyperinflation, the country slowly regained stability and Schacht's influence grew. By 1924, the Dawes Plan and the Rentenmark had restored confidence in Germany's financial system. Schacht was appointed president of the Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, giving him control over monetary policy. One of his first decisions was to limit the amount of money the government could borrow, preventing the reckless printing that caused the earlier collapse. Schacht believed a central bank must be independent from political influence, and he enforced strict rules that prevented politicians from using the Reichsbank to fund their agendas. These policies helped Germany maintain stable prices, attract foreign investment, and rebuild its industrial base. German companies like Siemens, Krupp, and IG Farben expanded. Unemployment dropped, and German exports rose. Historians call this period the Golden Twenties, a brief era when German cities filled with new cafes, theaters, and technological innovation. But beneath the surface, Schacht knew Germany's recovery depended heavily on foreign loans. If those loans stopped, the economy could collapse again. This would later become an important warning that Germany ignored. While Schacht was celebrated internationally, he was also aware that political tensions were rising inside Germany. Many Germans resented the Weimar government, blaming it for humiliation after the war. Extremist groups gained popularity, including Adolf Hitler's Nazi party. Schacht did not support their violence or radical ideas, but he did believe Germany needed stronger leadership and a better economic vision. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, foreign loans dried up, factories shut down, and unemployment soared. Germany was thrown into another crisis, and politicians struggled to respond. Schacht warned that the economic collapse would fuel political extremism, but his warnings went largely ignored. As chaos spread, the Nazi Party gained millions of new supporters, promising economic revival and national pride. Although Schacht disagreed with many of their policies, he later cooperated with Hitler between 1933 and 1937 to stabilize the economy again. This part of Schacht's career remains controversial. But it is important to note that his major achievement stabilizing Germany after WWI occurred a decade before he was connected to the Nazi regime. Returning to the core period after World War I, Schacht's strategies were admired by economists around the world. His ability to combine financial engineering with psychological insight made him one of the most influential central bankers of the 20th century. The Rentenmark reform is still taught in economic schools today as an example of how confidence, asset backing, and restrictive monetary policy can stop hyperinflation without gold reserves. Many modern economists compare Schacht's work to later reforms in countries like Brazil, Israel, and Zimbabwe, where monetary resets were needed to stabilize out-of-control inflation. What made Schacht's approach unique was his understanding that people needed to believe in the currency before it could be used. He often said, "Money is not gold, or paper money is trust." This philosophy drove every part of his plan and is still considered one of the most profound ideas in monetary economics. The world watched in disbelief as a nation that had once printed banknotes with 12 zeros suddenly regained stability almost overnight. As Germany entered the late 1920s, its cities became vibrant centers of culture, technology, and engineering. Berlin became famous for its nightlife, theaters, and modern architecture. German companies invested in new factories and machinery, and productivity soared. Exports increased, wages stabilized, and unemployment dropped. International observers traveled to Germany to study its recovery, and many economists credited Schacht's policies for creating a foundation of stability. But Schacht himself remained cautious, constantly warning government leaders that Germany's dependence on foreign loans made it vulnerable. He believed Germany needed long-term industrial planning, domestic investment, and trade alliances, not just borrowed money. His warnings turned out to be accurate when the Great Depression hit in 1929 and foreign capital disappeared, although this crisis was beyond Schacht's control. His earlier work had already achieved something extraordinary. He had saved Germany once when collapse seemed inevitable. Despite his later political controversies, Schacht's role in rebuilding Germany after WWI remains one of history's most significant economic turnarounds. His strategic introduction of the Rentenmark, his leadership in negotiating the Dawes Plan, and his reforms at the Reichsbank transformed a collapsing country into a functioning and growing economy within a remarkably short period. Many historians argue that without Schacht's intervention, Germany could have fragmented into separate regions or collapsed entirely under hyperinflation. His story is a powerful reminder that economic leadership can shape the destiny of nations, especially in moments of crisis. Even critics who disagree with parts of his later career acknowledge that his post-WWI strategy was a masterpiece of monetary policy. Germany's recovery in the 1920s remains a living example of how creativity, discipline, and psychological insight can rebuild a nation when everything seems lost. As you reflect on this story, it becomes clear that the tale of Hjalmar Schacht is much more than a financial history lesson. His reforms rescued a nation from chaos, restored stability to millions of families, and reshaped global economic thinking. The man who became known as the magician of the mark did not rely on gold, armies, or political power. He relied on strategy, discipline, and a deep understanding of human trust. If you found this journey through financial history fascinating, make sure to like this video so the algorithm helps more people discover it. Subscribe to Historynomica for more powerful stories hidden inside economic history, and share this video with someone who loves understanding how money and power have shaped our world. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for tomorrow's story, because history is not just about the past. It's about understanding how the world really works.